shortly. Mr. Bonds, are we on the record? Great. Good evening, everybody. It's 6:37, Monday, July 12th, 2021. Oh, hold on, some feedback here. Oops. Okay. Oh, try it again. Good evening, everybody. Monday, July 12th, 2021. Welcome to this special session of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education. This meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded for storage and viewing on our district website. The public can participate during hearings of individuals and delegates by signing up on the sheet at the back, submitting a written statement using the BOE questions forms on our website, or by signing up for live audio public speaks available on our website as well. Adequate written notice of this meeting of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education has been sent to both townships and village clerks, the Star Ledger, the News Record, tapintosoma.net, and thevillagedream.com. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Delgado, can you please call the roll? Roll call. Blah.
Good evening, everyone. Board Member Susan Bergen. Here. Board Member Shannon Cuttle.
Here.
Student representatives? Nope. Okay. Board Member Thayer Joshua.
Here.
Board Member Anne Marie Manny.
Here.
Board Member Alyssa Malaspina. Is she here?
You're muted if you.
Go back? Or try again? Come back, okay. Board Member Erin Siders?
Here.
Board Member Courtney Winkfield? Here. Board Member Johanna Wright? No.
Can you repeat it? We just caught the very tail end.
I'm sorry, present.
Okay, I'll try Board Member Alyssa Malaspina?
All right, I see this. We'll just say technical issues and we'll try to
Tech
get it back
issues?
in. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Sorry, my computer was acting weird and I didn't even know you were talking to me.
Okay. Okay.
Great, thank you, Board Secretary Del Garcia. The school board meeting is a business meeting in public, not a meeting with the public. Oftentimes, it may appear to members of our audience that the Board of Ed takes action with very little comment, and in many cases, a unanimous vote. Before a matter is placed on the agenda of a public meeting, the administration has thoroughly reviewed the matter with the superintendent. If the superintendent is satisfied the matter is ready to be presented to the Board of Education, the members of it is then referred to the appropriate board committee. Sorry about the members of the board committee work with the administration and the superintendent to assure that members fully understand the matter. After the committee discusses the matter, it's presented to the full board for discussion before any action is taken. Only then is it placed on the agenda for action at a public meeting. Okay, I'll revise it. Thank you. Even though we're here? Motion? Okay. Okay. Sure. I'd like to make a motion to hold this meeting both in a live and virtual format. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Manny. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, okay. That's unanimous, Mr. Gershio. Thank you. We're now at the time for hearings of individuals and delegations, also known as public speaks. This is an opportunity for you to share your concerns about an item on the agenda, but it's not a time for dialogue with the board. The board requests that you state your name and town of residence for your record. We will set the time to, just double checking here, 3 minutes, and ask that you respect that time limit. We must cut you off so it does not appear as if we are giving anyone an advantage to share their views over another individual. Speakers have the full protection of free speech during public speaks. However, the forum does not protect you from the subject of your free speech pursuing libel or slander charges. Finally, the board recommends that all members of our community pursue the chain of command. Mr. Augusta, I didn't see any signups up there. That's correct, physically? Okay, thank you. I will now move on to our audio speaks. And I do not see anyone audio speaks. I'm now moving on to the written form.
Board President Joshua, can you just make sure our audience can hear you? Because I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I will bring this a little closer. I will sit a little closer. Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Manny. We're now moving on to the written public speak submitted via the BOE questions form. And the first comment is from Alyssa Wyrick of South Orange. Hello. I feel the community has a need to know full disclosure and transparency of the past year's history of informed decision-making on the part of the Board of Education with regards to security and police presence at Underhill Field. A catalog of all known reported incidents, as well as the board and schools administration reactions to complaints, should immediately be made public and held accountable. There seems to be no real information dissemination about the issue of how The school board made decisions based on unsafe conditions on school grounds and no substantiation as to how documented and serious incidents were being acted on in response. Especially in light of the most current tragedy of a student loss of life, the community deserves a transparent update. Otherwise, it seems as if this issue is not being addressed publicly by the board or administrators to ensure the safety of all. Again, that was Alyssa Wyrick of South Orange. And that concludes our written public speaks for this evening.
Like me to give a brief response, Mr. President?
Well, the purpose of this meeting is to, as I go into it, is to appoint a new member, so that will, as it is not on the agenda, we'll discuss it, I'm sure, at some point in next week's meeting.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Again, Monday, July 12th, 2021. Tonight, we are here to fill a vacancy on the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education in line with the requirements set forth in Board Policy 0143 and NJSA 18A:13-11. We have 5 applicants for the position this evening: Mr. Anthony Mizaki, Mr. Christopher Sabin, Dr. Kwawi Telesford, Mr. Arun Vadlamani, and Mrs. Caitlin Whitlander. Each applicant will be given 5 minutes to make an opening statement in line with that and in line with our advertisement talking about why they're interested in the position and what skills they have and how they will be able to serve. Afterwards, the board will ask a total of 7 questions, which have been collaborated on by the board and the New Jersey School Boards Association. Applicants will have 2 minutes to answer. Once we are done with the questions, the board will adjourn to executive session. Okay, right here, Mr. Mizaki, can you just give us a test to make sure we can hear you?
Yeah, how's that?
That sounds good. We will let the applicants give their opening statements in alphabetical order by last name. So, Mr. Mizaki, you will be up first.
Wow, that's a first when mine starts. Great. Good evening, everybody. I can't see anybody. It's unfortunate, but I hope you're all well, having a great summer. And I did want to say that I was really, it warmed my heart to see that there were 5 of my neighbors who really wanted to step up and fill this board vacancy at such a challenging time. Thank you all. I'm sorry I can't be sitting next to you tonight. My name's Tony Mizaki, longtime Maplewoodian, proud Columbia High School graduate. I have 2 students, a rising 10th grader son, and my daughter's a rising 6th grader. And I'm going to assume that the letter of intent that I sent to the Board of Ed was not made public. I'll read the majority of that right now into the record as my opening statement. It seems that as citizens of the world, we're currently at a multitude of simultaneous crossroads, socially and culturally, globally and locally. But the crises of 2020 and 2021 have challenged our school system in unprecedented ways. Now that the dust is beginning to settle, our community is looking to our district administration and its Board of Education to be the beacon of leadership for each and every one of our students and their families, a model for how we will move beyond the multiple disruptions the pandemic has leveled on our educational ecosystem. It's unlikely we'll be able to simply get back to business, as many issues that have affected our schools for years have been amplified by this pandemic. Tireless work, commitment to excellence, and insistence on distinguished teaching and learning practices have always been at the core of my personal and professional development. Having taken an untraditional route to becoming an artistic, administrative, and educational leader at the K through college and nonprofit levels, my strategic approach to educational leadership has defined my career and established my reputation among artists, educators, administrators, policy advocates, and students as an embodiment of the artist as citizen values that I deeply cherish. I was elected to the SOMSD BOE in 2018, served 1 term through 2020. I served as second vice president, chair of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee, and on the Curriculum Committee. I was deeply involved in the early stages of our superintendent search, and I happily accepted roles and responsibilities as assigned to me by our board presidents. I took my role on the BOE very seriously. I showed up, I researched what needed study, I asked tough questions in committee and sometimes in public. I expressed strong opinions but kept an open mind, and I treated my relationships with my BOE colleagues with care and respect, even when we were in the most heated times of disagreement. I believe that even under the most difficult circumstances, there's always a way to lead with innovation and creativity, and I take this responsibility seriously, especially at a time when organizations around the world are dealing with such enormous challenges. I helped lead 2 educational institutions through the COVID era, finding innovative ways to conduct in-person music making opportunities while following best practices and mitigating risk indoors. I adjusted administrative structures and built capacity in my staff. I transformed a university outdoor parking garage into an ensemble rehearsal and performance space, and my efforts received national attention on CBS, ABC News, The Today Show, The Kelly Clarkson Show, amongst other media outlets. I currently serve on the New Jersey Task Force for Reopening Schools and co-wrote a document called September Ready 2020 Guidance for Arts Education, the only task force to address school reopening measures specifically for musicians and the arts, which continues to be utilized nationally. I'd be lying if I said I have been enjoying my time and my energy. I've recovered while being off the BOE the last 6 months, but I remain as passionate about this district as I've always been. With a full in-person return to schools on the horizon, accompanied by unfinished goals developed by this BOE and administration, our community is looking for stability and leadership from the top down, and of course, they deserve it. I would not submit this letter of intent or be here this evening if I didn't believe that I could play a part in helping the BOE and our district for the next few months, and it is my hope that you all agree. I thank you for accepting my application.
Thank you, Mr. Mizaki. Up next will be Mr. Saban.
Hello? Oh, wow, it's perfect. Hello, my name is Christopher Saban, and I'm putting my name up for consideration for the vacant South Orange Maplewood School Board member position. First, I'd like to just say thank you to the 4 other people who were deciding to put their hat in this ring. And Tony, I wish you were here because it's been a long time. I looked through my phone. I don't have your number in my phone, so we'll change that soon. But to go back, I want to let everybody know that I come with a lot of integrity. I was here for many years. I was a Boy Scout. I went all the way to the rank of Star. I have a lot of insight, many of the situations within this district, past and present. As a member of this community for over 49 years, I bring a unique perspective. I attended the schools, similar to Tony, within the district. I had my first moving up ceremony here at Fielding School. My mother was on the school board. My children attended these schools since 2012. My 2 sons graduated 2018 and 2020, and my daughter is graduating in the spring 2022. So I bring a lot of perspective to where the community has been and where it's going. As a recent board member from 2016 to 2018, and the main reason for me putting up my name for this position. I understand the challenges of governing this community. I understand the uniquenesses of this community, and I believe that I bring a skill which is bringing people together to have that conversation. I come from a family that believes that the greatest resource is how we invest in our future, which is now. Our future is our children, and this is something that we say it over and over, but we need to start again. As a past board member, I will continue, as a board member in the past and in the future, I will continue to ask questions and try to bring people together. I am looking at this for myself as a stopgap. I'm looking not to run in the fall. I'm looking to help bring perspective and to make sure that a person, when I look at the board right now, to make sure that we have all perspectives and all points of view being looked at and heard. And I encourage that because I am an open-minded individual who is looking to have conversations and tough conversations on the board as well as with our community at Stop and Shop, because we even with the masks on or off, we now can have these conversations. And I respect disagreement without personalizing the debate. I have a deep interest in keeping thoughtful and knowledgeable people directing our district. So I know that we are allowing them to be professionals and allowing them to do the work that they need to do. I can see the big picture, and I understand that the community struggles at staying the course and putting themselves together. We have to work to make sure that that is the biggest goal for our community. I understand the struggles of all parents wanting the best for the district and for their children. And I know that firsthand how frustrating this can be. Emotions traditionally run high during BOE meetings. How can we have that not be so high is we can't, because it's our kids. And everybody is invested in their children. But I can say with confidence, it is going to be a better place for students, teachers, and staff if we continue to educate the educators and make sure that the community is willing to learn and listen as well. Now, I've been told in the past that I have a calm and even personality, and I love to consider that a positive. And I will look at that as one of my superpowers as far as bringing people together and allowing the district to work for itself to do what they need to do. Lastly, I'd like to say, just as an important one, I know how to maintain confidentiality, and I appreciate the consideration and time for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saban. Up next will be Dr. Telesford.
All right, good evening. My name is Dr. Kwame Telesford. I'd like to thank the board and the superintendent for inviting me here today and considering me for the vacancy. A little about myself. I grew up here in South Orange. I actually only live 2 blocks away from here. I attended Clinton School, South Orange Middle, and Columbia. After that, I went into the field of biomedical engineering, where I got my bachelor's at Rutgers, my master's at Columbia, and then did a joint program at Wake Forest and Virginia Tech, where I got my PhD. And now I do brain imaging research, where I work in EEG and MRI. So I've been through lots and lots of school, and in all my years, I can say that I'm most proud to say that I'm a product of this district. Just last month, you honored some retirees from the district. One of them was Ben Hirschfield. He was a chemistry teacher, and he's one of the reasons why I have a PhD today. In high school, I was very active. I was on the fencing team, I did animation, I did cross country, jazz band, and I was also in the science league. And on the way back from one of the science league meetings, I had a conversation with Dr. Hirschfeld, and he was telling me, he encouraged me to stay in science and pursue my PhD. And I remembered that because it really helped drive me in school. And I realized that relationship between student and a teacher is very important because it really enhances your educational experience. And that's one reason why I would like to serve on the board. I want every child to have access to a great education that will help them grow into well-rounded individuals. And although I have some very fond memories of school, there were also some more negative experiences that I had along the way. And that a lot of those issues dealt with equity and access. For instance, when I moved into the 6th grade, I was tracked into one of the lower levels. And it wasn't based on my test scores, but it was based on teacher recommendations. And the only reason why I was moved up was because I had outperformed many of the other students. And they brought me into a meeting and then said, oh, we put you in the wrong level. Would you like to move to a higher level? And I could easily see I could be in another situation where I could just perform okay, and I would have remained in that lower track, and I would have had a very different educational experience. So I mention this because the district is about to start the pilot program for the Intentional Integration Initiative, and I really want that to be successful. And I believe in that in order for these programs to be successful, you need the board, the superintendent, the principals, the department heads. You need them to all be on board and to believe in these programs. And once we have, it starts from the top. Once the leadership believes in that, then that will filter down to the teachers, and then our students can benefit. So I'd be happy to lend my experience in data analysis to ensure that we are reaching our goals, but I also want to make sure that we don't get bogged down in metrics as the only measure of progress. Using metrics just provides a snapshot, and we can only gain a broader picture when we incorporate input from parents and teachers. Along with that progress on equity, we also need to make sure the long-range facility plan proceeds efficiently. So such ambitious financial undertakings require great care and oversight. That's why it's imperative that we work alongside the superintendent and the newly hired business administrator to ensure that the construction milestones are met. In that same vein, I believe we need to get a better picture of how over a year of virtual learning has affected students, mainly in the area of our extracurricular activities. As we return to in-person instruction, we must include equal attention to restoring extracurricular activities for our students. I think one of the reasons this district is first class is because education has always been connected to diversified extracurricular opportunities, which enhance student performance across different domains. And I can say personally, as a student athlete, filmmaker, musician, I believe we enjoy some of the best programs that Day has to offer. Thus, it is imperative we ensure that such programs are given the same level of attention as our academic programming. And I know some people will laugh when I say this, but I always tell people I'm just a scientist. I tend to look at problems in a little differently. I have a more analytic approach. I like to look at problems and look at all their complexities, because if you change one thing, it affects the other. And I always tell people I don't have all the answers, and I would be suspect of anyone that claimed to have all the answers. And all I can say is I try to ask the right questions, and most important, we have to understand that we are all here working together in a collaborative environment where we need to listen to all voices and make sure we work together to provide the superintendent with the support he needs to perform at the highest level. And because if the superintendent can perform well, then our district can perform well, and that benefits our children. And so I hope that with my background, I can contribute in some meaningful way. And with that, I would like to thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Up next will be Mr. Vadlamani.
Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Taylor, teachers and fellow citizens of South Orange and Maplewood. My name is Arun Vadlamani. I'm here to submit my application for the vacancy on the Board of Education of the South Orange Maplewood School District. I grew up in Mumbai, India, and where I completed my undergraduate studies in engineering. I came here to grad school to the US on a scholarship for computer engineering. Since then, I worked in tech startups, I worked in hedge funds, and now I work on Wall Street building algorithmic trading engines. I enable business growth by leading teams of architects, analysts, and engineers to deliver complex technical solutions. So my wife and I have lived in South Orange since 2003. And no, we did not come from Brooklyn. We love architecture, diversity, and the unique people that live in our two towns. I'm a strong proponent of public education. Both my daughters have been to school since kindergarten. My older child is a rising sophomore at CHS, and the younger one is a rising sixth grader in SOMS. I've been a proud Girl Scout dad. I'm the cookie distribution coordinator for the entire district of over 60 troops who sell tens of thousands of boxes of cookies. So through the elementary school, my wife and I have been volunteering in the class. I mean, we celebrate math on Pi Day, that's, March 14th. And then we do rocket science and lightsabers on Star Wars Day, may the force be with you. And coding during the hour of code. But now that our girls are in middle school and high school, we've been firmly told not to show up ever again. So that's a different problem, right? So I've always been very passionate about children's education. I started as a volunteer way back in 1996, and later joined the board of members for the international nonprofit called Asha for Education. 100% of the funds raised by Asha provide an opportunity for children in India who have no other means of accessing education. I'm also a keen follower of policies and educational initiatives in SOMA. So while exploring the path to apply for the vacancy on the board seat, I talked to many of my friends in our community, and one of them has said something that has helped me solidify what I believe is, that I've been thinking for a long time. That is for our schools to be national blue ribbon schools. I mean, this is what it takes to be one. Okay, I mean, we did a fair amount of research to figure out what it is. And the first requirement is the schools have the state's highest high school graduation rates and highest achieving students in English and math. I mean, that's awesome. But I think the second requirement is far more important, at least to me. Schools have to make the greatest advances in closing subgroup achievement gaps. I mean, now, how would you not want that for our schools? I mean, equity and excellence are not mutually exclusive. Or for the fact, people coming from the other side, excellence and equity are not mutually exclusive, either way you look at it. I want our kids to be in a blue ribbon school. We have embarked on this path with intentional integration plan, which is fantastic, and now is a time to execute effectively. So if you think about it, over the past few years, we as a community have had a lot of discussions, on many different things. And like the Edison bulb, it normally produces more heat than light. So we've trolled each other on Facebook and MOL and all the different online media. But now is the time for responsible action. We have agreed upon a path, and we need to screw in a more efficient LED bulb. Less heat, more light. We need to ensure that, one, we diligently follow the plan. Two, work hard and ensure that implementation is successful, right? And number three is measure and confirm that the plan is actually working. I mean, not just on paper or at some aggregate level, but actually working for our children and every day. So in addition to representing all citizens of Soma, if nominated, I hope to represent immigrant Americans who make up about 20% or a little over 20% of Soma. I will round out the board's collective knowledge by offering my real-world practical approach to solving big problems. And I have the temperament, the time, and the energy to collaborate professionally with other board members in setting quantifiable objectives for the superintendent and to ensure that he succeeds. I mean, that by far is the most important thing we look at. So again, I have the professional achievements, governance experience, and deep involvement in the community that uniquely qualify me for this vacant seat. And lastly, I mean, I know that we have stellar candidates up here, but I do hope you pick me. Thanks.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll hear from Mrs. Whitlander.
Thank you. Mr. Board President, board members, and fellow candidates. My name is Caitlin Whitletter, and my family and I will be celebrating our 5-year anniversary of being Maplewoodians this upcoming September. It's been a busy 5 years for us, starting our journey here in this community as newlyweds, and I stand here today with 3 beautiful children at home. Early childhood development has always been a passion of mine, and upon building roots here in the Soma community, I have sought out opportunities to engage with our youth. I have been a volunteer coach with the Girls on the Run program at the Jefferson School, and in 2019, I reached out to Phil McCormick and the Columbia High School Student Council to involve students with a local community event that I planned to benefit the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I had the opportunity to attend a student council meeting, which led to student volunteers who selflessly committed their time and were fundamental to the event's success. These experiences have inspired me to become even more engaged with our student body through the Board of Trustee role. As a Board of Trustee, I recognize that I am responsible for representing both guardians and students. I pledge to make an intentional, sustained effort to build real relationships with our students and their guardians to understand their perspectives, experiences, and needs. I believe that investing personal time in building relationships with the people we represent, along with fellow board members, school administrators, and other influential groups, will bring forth meaningful opportunities to address systemic issues and to expand upon successful initiatives within our schools. I am particularly interested in continuing to do the work around social equity and inclusivity, expanding special education resources, offering a best-in-class education to all students, and increasing safety and security measures in our schools. As a prospective incoming board member, I would be prepared to listen first, then lead. I believe that in working together, this board can create revolutionary impact that is both metrics-driven and measurable. In order to get there, I would like to support and initiate efforts to improve data collection and reporting, which would better inform top-down decisions in the district. It will also help us to measure the efficacy of these decisions and identify areas for continued improvement. I've spent the majority of my career in business development, having worked in the financial services industry and within the nonprofit sector. I was responsible for designing and implementing strategies that created new business partnerships and sustainable lines of revenue growth. One of my main priorities was to engage with key stakeholders across the organization to better understand the needs of the business, identify areas for new development, and secure buy-in across all verticals for proper strategy execution. Creating value alignment and breaking down internal barriers enabled my team to build consensus among stakeholders with different opinions, concerns, strengths, weaknesses, and ideas. I believe that these skills would serve me and the public well as a Board of Education trustee. I would proudly welcome the opportunity to represent the needs of every child and their families in our Soma community, and I am committed to taking on the demands and responsibilities of a Board of Trustee role. I want to thank you all for your time and consideration today, and for your ongoing dedication to improving the lives of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitler, and thank you all for those opening statements. We will now move on to the questions. Again, we will rotate in order of both asking from here at the SHU and virtual, as well as answering the questions. So not everyone will be going first, or everyone will always be going last. Question number one was for Ms. Wright to ask. She's asked me to do it on her behalf. She is here, and and we will be starting with Mr. Saban. Question number one, what do you see as the role and responsibility of a board member?
That's a great question, Mrs. Wright.
I'm very sorry, I forgot to mention the most important thing. You all have 2 minutes.
Not 5?
No.
Oh, gosh, okay.
So take a minute, apologize. And that's for everyone, 2 minutes for these questions. I sincerely apologize for that.
Okay. Board members' responsibilities are to work with the superintendent, to work with the leaders within the district, to make sure that policies are being formulated and actually making sure that those I's are dotted and T's are being crossed. And having been a person who has been in this district, as I mentioned before, for 49 years, things have gone up and gone down, but you have to make sure that you have the right board that is synergized to ask tough questions amongst themselves, but to then come back and then support what has been made to happen within, or what has been asked to happen within the community. We've done that a number of times over the years, and I think that's where we've ended up where we are. Pluses as well as some of the minuses of not, or retreading or doing things multiple times or going back and doing something. So in order for a board member to be supportive, a board member should work within the board, work within the confines, but ask tough questions and make sure that they're supporting by asking the tough questions as well of the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Telesford, you have 2 minutes as well.
All right, so I believe the role of a board member is to advise the superintendent, also to work on policy, curriculum, approving of the budgets, but most importantly, it is collaborating with other board members so that they can give proper support to the superintendent. Because the superintendent is going to be doing all the work for the district. And the board members is just to make sure that whatever policy initiatives are successful and asking the right questions to ensure that those policies are being implemented properly. And also, I guess the main thing is that they're not running the school system. I think that's an important thing to remember. They're there just to make sure that whatever the main goals of the district are being fulfilled. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Vadlamani.
So, I've been on the board for Asha for Education. I think, at least in this context, the most important job the board has is to hire the right superintendent, create appropriate goals for the district, and make sure that they're followed. That's by far the most important one. And if I'm just going to quote the first line from the bylaws that we have online. The board shall be responsible for the operation of the school, but shall delegate the administration to the superintendent. I mean, that is a very profound statement, because that basically means there are 3 things. Number one is just like the doctors, first is do no harm. Make sure that you don't create policies that actually destroy the existing school district. Number 2 is you create policies that are actually setting the goals and making sure that's happening. That's like the kind of the preservation of what it is. And number 3 is periodically you will want to add more policies that grow the school district. So I see that as three big chunks that you would want to do as a board member. And of course, given all that, there's these core of ethics, You have all the responsibilities of keeping the decorum there, making sure that you work collaboratively. But these is like the big chunks of the work that you have. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Whitletter? Mrs. Whitletter, apologies.
As I mentioned in the earlier remarks, I think one of the first responsibilities is to represent the voices of our parents and our students. And that comes from, understanding what are their experiences, what are the unique perspectives that, each of our families and our children are facing, and then what are the needs. And then being able to filter that down and align that to what our strategies are within the school to make sure that we aren't missing the mark and that we're continuing to evolve and to meet these challenges. I also think that as a board member, you're in an advisory seat. Your responsibility is to build relationships with all of the key stakeholders because, as mentioned, at the end of the day, the superintendent and his administration will be responsible for implementing these strategies, but they can't do it alone. They have a lot on their plate. And so the amount of time and effort that we can give to them and to their administration to be advisory and to add that additional level of support to help him sort of onboard these strategies and do it efficiently, I think is really important. And it's important for the board, I think, to have relationships with teachers, with the administration, with the superintendent. I mean, we do represent our community. We're elected governing officials. And I think it's important for us to have relationships with the members of our community to understand, how we can deliver on our role to, bring their needs to light.
Thank you. Mr. Mizaki?
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm feeling reflective here in this virtual horseshoe, but I'm so impressed with our neighbors and their candidacies and what they're saying. So I want to thank them again. Truly, we're very lucky, all of us, for that. I believe Dr. Telesford said this at the end, because we've heard it a million times. The role of a Board of Education is not to run the schools, but to see that they are well run. In my experience on the BOE, that's meant different things to different people at different times. But as one of my neighbors also said, that first and foremost, board members are responsible for and to all of the students in the schools, And we're also representatives of and to our communities, as well as being state representatives. We are community representatives, and that means representing the entire community that we know is quite complex, just not an area where we live or where individual supporters and special interest groups lie. I feel very strongly about that. And yes, we're policymakers, right? We have a responsibility to listen to all of our community members and explain to those with a particular point of view the needs of the system as a whole. We have the eagle-eye view on the entire school system, while others, by their very nature, might be a little more myopic. Every policy we approve and action we take, right, and needs to be based on what we feel is best for all students. That's very, very complicated. Let's see what hasn't been mentioned. Yes, we provide guidance of policy in instruction and personnel, in general administration, and NJSBA says that we should be visionaries and goal setters, which we are, where the superintendent is the implementer in chief of the district. So, well, it looks like my time's up. That's all I'm going to give you right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mizaki. The next question will be posed by Board Member Manny, and the first answer will be Dr. Telesford.
Great. Approximately 20% of district students have special needs and receive special education services under the Special Services Department. What is your experience, knowledge of special services in our district?
So my experience with special services is mostly just from classroom experience, and there were some students that had special needs. And one of the most important things was that they had resources so that they could have extra time to perform in the classroom. But most importantly was we want to make sure that we have those resources for students and that we are listening to parents when they want to test their kids to make sure that they are getting the best in terms of education. Because some of the issues that I've heard is that some parents will have a child that they know may need special needs, but they're not getting the testing for that. So one of the things that I saw when I was in school was that we did see those students that needed special needs and they received that. And so we want to make sure that we keep that level of devotion to making sure that those students are getting the needs they have.
Thank you, Mr. Vadlamani.
So one of the things that the district really needs to do is to be able to accommodate students of all abilities. Well, that's like a given. So that basically means that includes people who are, no, if they have special needs, we need to ensure that we have all the support that is required to address that. And the other thing that I've, again, this is, I know, I'm a big guy who talks about data and not anecdotes, but anecdotally I've heard is that it is getting a little more difficult to kind of do the paperwork, and there are a lot of hurdles to qualify for that. So my view on that is that we should obviously have the safeguards and the guardrails to ensure that everybody is there, but we should be absolutely certain that anyone who deserves the services should get it. So that's pretty much what I want to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Wetler.
So as I mentioned, I was a coach for Girls on the Run. And it was I had done the fall coaching, and then it was end of June, and kids were getting out of middle school, the Jefferson School, and I ran into one of the girls that I coached, and I was just checking in on her, how are you doing? And she was with her mother, and her mother said, well, we're actually moving. Like, what do you mean you're moving? You guys have been in Maplewood for so many years, and, having that conversation, and she said, well, she really needs some resources. She has some learning disabilities, and she's just not getting that in the school system. And that was the first that I had really heard of that. But then most recently, neighbors of ours are also leaving for that very same reason. And so I echo what my fellow candidates have said, that we need to represent all students. And I do think that at the current moment, we are missing the mark in this regard. And I just don't think anyone and their family should have to pick up and move because we can't deliver on programming and resources that can help our children.
Thank you. Mr. Mizaki?
Yeah, I've been trying to think about, what I can say in 2 minutes in this regard. Obviously, our special education community, as Board Member Manny just said, comprises 20%, if not more. And every aspect of special education is tethered to all of the areas that a board needs to govern, whether it's the buildings and grounds, right, the finance piece, the curriculum piece, and of course, many of these students who receive these special education services are the most vulnerable in our district, and through this pandemic have been incredibly deeply affected. Of course, that hits home a little bit. My son has a 504 plan, not an IEP, but they have been deeply affected by the pandemic and the loss of in-person instruction. So when I came on the board with my friend Chris, we saw that we were at a ground zero of sorts with special education. The spending for out of district and was completely out of control. We lacked administrative infrastructure. We weren't able to literally cross our T's and dot our I's as far as a lot of things were concerned. And luckily, Dr. Marana came in. Not only was she dealing inside with a lot of the infrastructure issues, but she was educating the board as to all the things to look for. She liaised with CPAC. I learned a lot under her tutelage. I was sorry to see her go, and of course, I'm sorry to see us potentially in the same place right now with the lack of an assistant superintendent for special services and a 9 through 12 supervisor of special services, as I understand it. So, you know, this board needs to use its collective knowledge along with Superintendent Taylor to make sure that there's some continuity here with what's been built up over the last 3 years with this administrative infrastructure and financial capacity that we've created so we can get everybody back in person and build this up again.
Thank you. Lastly, Mr. Saban.
Wow. Yeah, there's special education, the needs of that community are our community. It's not one versus the other. And to what other candidates have mentioned, it is not, it's hard to understand it unless when you've attended meetings, you have family members who are involved in this community, you know that this is when you find the pain points within our district. And having gone through experiences where I've seen, heard, and understand that we're not accepting of everybody within that community, it's difficult. So we have to maybe first just take the understanding that there's money for everybody. And to what Tony had mentioned, it's not just for one group, but that represents everybody in all communities. However, the unfortunate thing is that the minority, when I say minority, I mean Black students do not get or are underrepresented most of the time, in my experience, in being identified or being willing to be identified. So even though we've had a lot of pluses, I'd love to see the asking that question and letting it be okay to ask that question earlier on, and making sure that everybody is at the same level so we can get services, because everybody doesn't have the services that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be for Mr. Vadlamani first, and it will be asked by Board Member Cuddle.
Thank you. The third question is, are you familiar with the recently passed board goals, and what are your thoughts on these priorities?
Yes, I am very familiar with the board goals. I've read them and I've followed them. And what I believe about at least about the board goals, I mean, you know, the ones on facilities, the integration, and also teaching, learning, and the staff recruitment and retention and development, is that these goals are normally set at the beginning of the year, and I don't think we should be revisiting them or relitigating them halfway through. So the whole idea of goals is that you set the goals, run it through, have periodic, you know, iterations of confirming that these goals work well, and then, if required, change them for the next year. Because, you know, obviously moving goalposts in the middle of the, you know, half is not a good idea. So yeah, you know, so that's my view of the goals.
Thank you. Mrs. Whitlitter?
I'm not as familiar with the recently passed board goals. I probably should have read up on that before this meeting, but I guess I'll have questions about that for you guys in the future, but I'm not as familiar.
Thank you. Mr. Mizaki?
Sure. So we have, can I ask a clarifying question, please? Are you talking board goals or are you talking district goals? Mr. Vadlamani, and I'm, you know, mentioned district goals, which is fantastic. But what is your question?
The question reads, are you familiar with the recently passed board goals, and what are your thoughts on these priorities?
Okay, I'm going to hear that question as the Board of Education goals. So which are different than district goals. The district goals are quite robust. There's not 2 minutes. The board goals are relatively basic as compared to the district goals. I know that certification status has something to do with that, and you know, some basic, some real basic stuff that should be a no-brainer for boards. I know that if I remember correctly, there was a committee structure piece in there. I would say I'm going to just hook onto that, I suppose, because that's really the one with teeth. I've been on the Board of Education with committees that respectfully didn't work very well. I mean, I was there too, so it was my fault as well. And I've worked on a Board of Education with committees that worked or started to work quite well, and then perhaps didn't again. So I'm hoping that the committee piece that's embedded in the board goal that you have is something that's being looked at again. If I was coming on after 6 months off, that I would come back on and we would see that there's a better way to report out to the greater board a little easier. I saw that you're dabbling with a board of the whole structure in some committees, which is important. And a way, obviously, the biggest challenge for a board of 9, as a lot of you know, and I lived with you, was effectively communicating with each other what needs to be communicated through the administration to all board members, so that when we get together on a Monday, we're not, you know, hearing things obviously for the first time. So again, if I conflated board goals with district goals, I apologize. I heard the question as board goals. They look rather simple on paper when you see them, but the committee structure jumped out at me.
Thank you. Mr. Saban?
I'm just waiting for the 2 minutes. I don't want to take it. So as far as board goals, and I'm looking, listening and nodding at what some of what Tony has said and some of the questions. When I hear board goals, the main thing that I think about is making sure that the goal of communicating and making sure that the board is working collectively and working to make sure that the superintendent is able to do the job of running the district. And that would mean it's probably, not probably, it is the communication piece, which is important, meaning not just at board meetings, having a conversation with somebody after hours, but making sure that the processes are in place and doing that work, which doesn't necessarily get spoken about, but doing the work in between getting the work done. And I would challenge and ask the question of how often do board members talk to one another? How often do board members communicate outside of what is going on? And do they know each other? And do they find places to agree on things and work from that? And whether or not there are, whatever the goals are, that should be the goal of the board, to make sure that they are listening and learning together, because you can't be off by yourself to do something and expect a positive result. You have to have and it's not a majority, but you have to have people listening and learning together. And that's what, if in working as a board member in the past, that I strive to do that, and I would do that again now.
Thank you. And lastly, Dr. Telesford.
All right, so if the board goals are about the role of the board, it really is, yes, to support the superintendent, but also to make sure that things are communicated clearly to the public, and also that among board members, that you can trust each other's work on committee so that you can run a very efficient meeting and make sure that the goals of the district are being met. And if we're talking about just district-wide goals, where we're talking about the long-range facility plan, the intentional integration initiative, then these are things that the board has voted on, and we're just going to make sure that they are implemented properly, and that whatever measurements or metrics that we're looking at, we can look at them to see our progress and also be dynamic and make any adjustments to ensure that we are reaching our goals.
Great, thank you. We'll now move on to question number 4. This one will be, Ms. Whitlander will answer first, and the question will be asked by Board Member Cybers.
Hello. Are you aware of the time and training commitments as well as ethic law disclosures required for school board membership?
Board Member Cybers, could you say that a little bit louder? It's a little,
sorry.
we had a little issue. Just go ahead. Thank you.
Let me try this. Are you aware of the time and training commitments as well as ethics law disclosures required for school board membership?
Could someone, I couldn't really.
Okay, I got it. Sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Board Member Cybers. I'm just going to repeat it one more time. Are you aware of the time and training commitments as well as ethics law disclosures required for school board membership?
Yes, I am. And currently, hopefully I'll have a new job soon, but I'm currently unemployed, so I have a significant amount of time on my hands. I was working at a corporate development nonprofit and was let go during COVID. Obviously, nonprofits suffered due to events no longer existing and revenue streams were cut. So I'm currently in the process of looking for my next role, but I think it's a very perfect time for me to engage in this role and the work that's necessary. I am happy to take that on, and even if I were to have a job tomorrow, I mean, this is a huge commitment, and it's very exciting, and I am happy to have that responsibility to, help every child in this community.
Thank you. Board Member Mizaki.
I'll be quick. Yes, very aware.
Thank you. Board Member Saban. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Mr. Saban.
Painfully aware. And I will tell you that since I have 2 minutes on that one, but I won't take all of it, that when you join the board, I'm just looking at the board members here, that you don't realize how many other committees that you are required to be a part of. And I would make the recommendation that this community we're oversaturating a small few to do the work of too many people, and that we should really, really reconsider the extra committees outside of the board committees. I'm not even talking about the 3 or 4 committees that are set up for the board. But yes, I understand. Yes, sorry.
Dr. Telesford.
Yes, I'm aware of the large time commitment. I know that there is new training for new board members that they go through. I also know that there's committee work outside of the public meetings. And I know that there was talk of having a committee of a whole. And I have had conversations with people about some of the long meetings that are the public meetings. And one of the suggestions was that oftentimes when you talk about decisions that are made in committee, there's often ways that they rehash it in the public meeting. So some of that, I think, just has to come down to working more collaboratively and trusting in each other's ability to do their jobs. But yes, I am very much aware of the long meetings, but I'm used to spending a lot of time reading and doing work in my fields.
Thank you. Mr. Vadlamani.
So yeah, I mean, I'm very aware of the time commitment required to work on the board. I mean, the way I see it is that if this was an easy problem which could be solved by 10 minutes of chit chat and vote and walk away, I mean, we would have solved this a long time back. I mean, obviously we're dealing with difficult problems, we're dealing with human kind of complexities that come in. So obviously it is going to take time. So one of the first things I did even before coming here is that my family knows that I'm going to do this. Because that is like, it's like full disclosure to the family first before I go anywhere else outside. So yes, I understand what the time commitments are. And then I believe you also asked a second part about the code of ethics. And I did read the NJ State Code of Ethics. And I mean, they're pretty reasonable. I mean, there's nothing in there that jumps out and says that, oh my God, I need to worry about that. It is common sense. But I've read that. So I'm very aware of the Code of Ethics too. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. We'll now move on to question number 5, which will go to Mr. Mizaki first, and will be asked by Board Member Bergen.
Thank you. One of the board's primary responsibilities is to evaluate the superintendent. Do you have any relatives working for the district or any professional or otherwise contractual obligations connected to the district?
I always noted a standing recusal since I'm on the upper administration at Montclair State University. I always noted those recusals. Otherwise, no to the rest of that question.
Mr. Saban.
No.
Dr. Telesford.
No.
Mr. Vadlamani.
No, I have no conflict of interest. I don't expect to recuse myself. And if you're worrying about, nepotism or somebody else on the board, I mean, all my relatives are like 5,000 miles away, so that's not a problem either.
And lastly, Mrs. Whitlander.
No.
Okay. Question number 6 will be start with Mr. Saban and will be asked virtually by Board Member Malaspina.
Hi, I want to make sure everybody can hear me since I'm virtual.
We're good.
Okay, first, I just want to apologize in advance that you're not seeing me on camera. It's not because I don't want to be. I just had back surgery and nobody wants to see me right now. But my question is please give specific examples of your experiences working as part of a team. How do you think those experiences will help you work with the board as a whole? I'll repeat it again because I always like to repeat it again twice for my educators. Please give specific examples of your experiences working as a team. How do you think these experiences will help you work with the board as a whole?
Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. Appreciate that question. So for me, my examples would be working personnel committee, working on the finance committee, and having conversations with board members, making sure that they were brought up to speed when initially, specifically with the superintendent search, when we were transitioning from Superintendent Ramos to Dr. Ficara, and we had to bring everything to the board as a whole before the board would actually come back to us, and so that we could move things forward. And with that process, it was helpful, one, to communicate amongst the group, which were 4, and then from the 4, it was very important that we communicated and reached out and had conversations with each other. Not to just, because as we know, when you send a text or when you send a message, it is just sometimes not interpreted correctly. And I think with that experience, we were able to identify the right person for that job at that time to help bring us to where we are right now. So I would say that in retrospect, that would be the memory that sticks out the most.
Thank you. Dr. Telesford.
All right, so in my field, I guess, in my background, I'm biomedical engineering, and our main role is to take something like working in a hospital and then taking engineering principles and joining those. So much of the work we do is working with people of different backgrounds. So in my case, I work at Nathan Klein Institute, and we're working on a brain initiative grant. So we're working with some people that do animal research, others that are neuroscientists, some are doctors in radiology, and engineers. So we have people of very different backgrounds. So the main thing is being able to speak with everybody. So my role usually is to try to understand everyone else's position so that we can work together and then reach our goal, which in this case, we're trying to understand the brain. In the case of the school system here, we're trying to make sure that our kids are getting the best education.
Thank you. Mr. Vadlamani.
So I'm going to give you 2, very specific examples, right? I mean, one is I work at a bank, which one would imagine is, you imagine right, is that it's a very command and control kind of environment. It's very hierarchical. But the department where I work, electronic trading, is we trade billions of dollars worrying about microseconds here and microseconds there, and that is an extremely collaborative environment. I mean, we have people from who are PhDs, quants, who have data analysis. We have software engineers. We have sales and trading people all work together to make sure that an average day goes by and we trade 20 billion shares. I mean, that's like a normal day. So that is one example I can give you where we work collaboratively, but in a very hierarchical fashion. The second example I'm going to talk about is when I worked on the board of Asha for Education. I mean, that is completely different. I mean, a board has no hierarchy. There is no hierarchy. Everyone's a peer. So that is a very different work environment, at least in my view, than a kind of a command and control. Because in a command and control kind of thing, you say do it, and you better do it. Whereas on the board, I mean, you have to use all your skills as a human to kind of influence, to kind of reason, and to use all your capabilities to understand the problem and then collectively come to a conclusion. I think that's where there's that's why it's a difficult problem. But I mean, I've done that before, and I think that is what I kind of aspire to, is that we should be able to get together and solve some of the problems that are in our minds today.
And Ms. Whitletter.
Yes. So I too will give 2 examples. One being when I worked in the financial services industry, I was hired as one of the initial team members of a brand new business line build out into private wealth. And so we were part of a reputable firm, but it was very much a grassroots effort in the sense that we had to build our reputation internally as well as externally. Amongst our colleagues, we had to determine, how do we grow this business? We know what our end goal is. We know how much money we have to achieve and obtain within a year, but how are we going to get there? So working collaboratively with my team, we were able to develop best practices and processes around that. We were able to do business-to-business development to help us acquire new partners. And we were able to build relationships internally with key stakeholders that would help us to achieve those goals. So it was a very trying time. It was a lot of fun, but it was definitely a great experience and a lot of work because there was a lot. We couldn't have done it if we didn't do it together. And I'm proud to say that that business line is doing extremely well, and they were the first to do it in the alternative assets world. So now more companies are doing it as a result of the work that we put in for the close to 4 years that I was there. And then I would say the team that I'm most proud of to be part of, and it's one that I think a lot of us can relate to, is just, the team dynamic of being part of a family. And in my case, it was a fast-growing family, and so we all have a role to play. And my husband and I, it takes a lot of teamwork to make sure that we can achieve our family goals and take care of our kids the way that we want to. But that's the current team that I'm a part of, and it's a challenge, and it's a lot of fun too.
Ms. Mizaki?
Would you mind asking the question once more, please? I think I forgot some of it.
Sure, I can answer. Let's do it one more time. Please give specific examples of your experience working as part of a team. How do you think these experiences will help you work with the board as a whole?
Thank you. Well, I guess I'm in a little bit of a unique situation in that, 5 of my former colleagues are sitting here and are going to go into executive session to discuss the candidates. So I think as far as my work on this particular Board of Ed in the past, I'll let you decide how that was instead of me tell you, and then you can go discuss it. I think that's the most fair way to do it. But, I've been involved in education, and specifically public education, for over 20 years now. And I have flown at many different altitudes, I like to call it. I think I mentioned it earlier, whereas the Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools to a great degree is really, flying up here. And we have the teachers and the students flying down here. I've been in flying at all those different altitudes throughout my life. Obviously, like many of you, I was a student, I was a teacher, I was an assistant principal, I was a district supervisor in this very district. I'm a dean of a school now at a public university. And, those, and while maintaining connection to students, those are very eye-opening, places to be. And that, as some of you know, deeply affects the way I sit on a board. I think a lot of us have kind of toggled with, not getting in the weeds while we know certain things at the same time and operating in that. And I think we'll always struggle with those kind of things. But I've led teams. I've operated within teams. I really enjoy the collaborative nature and the dynamic. On this particular board, those times where we really came to true consensus and did something together, with all the differences we've had, felt amazing to me. I went home and told my wife, man, this is great. And there were some other times where it didn't go the way, some of us wanted. And we push on and forward if we, think it's best for this district and it's within the superintendent's vision. So anyway, I'll let you discuss the rest, obviously.
Thank you. And our last question will be for Dr. Telesford first, and will be asked by Board Member Wakefield.
Are there any other local community, nonprofit, and/or volunteer experiences you wish to share with the board?
Yes. So locally, when I was in graduate school, I learned to dance Cuban salsa. And so when I finally came back here, I actually met someone at a party that actually lived in South Orange, and at the right on Irvington Avenue and South Orange Avenue, the church there, we would teach classes there, and we would actually performed at Tuscan, Marshall, and we do that every year. And the pandemic shut that down, but we're looking to bring that back again. Professionally, I organized a network science conference. Professionally, I do brain imaging, but I use a technique called network science where we look at how things are connected to each other in a complex manner. And we have our own, which has been going on for now 6 years, our own satellite conference that we, an addition to a main network science conference, and I've been helping and organizing that for every year.
Thank you. Mr. Vadlamani.
So, by far the largest one I work locally is obviously the Girl Scouts. I've been involved in it for a while. As I mentioned before, I was a Girl Scout dad, and now I am the cookie distribution manager. Actually, I was going to give that as an example of how to work with teams. It sounds trivial, it sounds local, but that is a fantastic place where you actually work with the district, the Girl Scouts of the heart of New Jersey, and then you work with all the parents, you work with volunteers who show up, and in the most efficient manner, you move about 5,000 or 6,000 cases that make in like 5 hours. That's like a fantastic kind of a thing. Every time I go there, I'm very happy because it's all done by volunteers. This is not anybody telling you what to do. People show up, whether it's raining, and it normally happens in January when it's like freezing, and people show up. So that I think it keeps you going. I like that because that's a local thing that's happening. And the second thing which I can talk about, which is we participate from work again, is every Thanksgiving we take a couple of days off, normally either 1 or 2 days, and we help packing food bank, pantry stuff. And that goes out. That goes out every Thanksgiving, and that's very enjoyable because it's a full meal that goes out for a full family. I like, the idea of feeding a full family is a lot more kind of thing than writing a check and saying it goes to some food bank. That is pretty satisfying. That's my experience with nonprofits.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitlander.
Yes. So locally, I mentioned Girls on the Run. I had the Yoga in the Park event in 2019, and that's where I engaged with the Columbia High School students and through the Student Council, which was wonderful. They helped us identify a high school band, so we had live music at the event, and then they came to volunteer that day. And it was really special to, think about those that we've lost to cancer, and we came together as a community. And when I left that day, I thought, well, why don't we have access to our student body more? It was just everyone within the community that attended was very moved to have student representation there, and that was very exciting. And I will say in my professional career, I've always been involved with child education and development. I was the first coach of the first girls, middle school girls at St. Stephen of Hungary Charter School in Manhattan. I was their first girls basketball coach, which was a lot of fun. I did that for 2 years. It was, they showed up in their uniforms and in saddle shoes. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna start basketball today. This is great. In addition to that, I was part of a Power Lunch program. So every week I would go to one of the public schools in New York and read to a student. And I was partnered with that student as her mentor for about 3 years. And at the firms that I've worked for, I've always been involved with their corporate social responsibility teams, with their charitable foundations, and have been a team captain on volunteer employee days. And I would love to engage and be more involved here locally. This pandemic sort of threw me off, but I try to donate to MEND, whether it's food or funds, as much as possible this past year, but can't wait to get back out there face to face.
Thank you. Mr. Mizaki.
Wow, it's really incredible listening to all that, and thank you. I think there's got to be a synergy somewhere with the Cuban salsa dancing and the Girl Scout cookie distribution. I'm going to think about that and get back to you all. But my time, I'm obviously up here in Vermont. I'm the executive director with my wife of Summer Music School, and so obviously I've been deeply involved in nonprofit. But as some of you know, I am a staunch arts advocate. I believe that all children are artists and musicians when they are born, and that schools in general tend to teach the creativity out of them as opposed to in them. And I spend all of my time as a gratis consultant or donating my books that I author to small and large school systems, educational institutions like Carnegie Hall, wherever it's possible for me to help educators, administrators, and other people learn the value and the transformative nature of arts education for young children and how it affects the rest of their lives in their school. Not because it raises math scores and everything else, because it is a very human element that is essential for their lives. And all of the work that I do is volunteer, including on this latest state task force for reopening schools, because I felt so strongly that we should be performing, singing, and playing together in person, even during COVID, even when our aerosolization rates as musicians, unfortunately, were very high. So I guess that's the one I'll cherry pick for you this evening.
Thank you. And Mr. Saban.
Okay, let's see here. I was trying to think, and I'm going to start from most recently. I am on the task force in South Orange. Well, back up 1 second. I moved from Maplewood to South Orange 3 years ago, and since then I've been active, really active in South Orange, where I was the treasurer for the most recent Board of Trustees election, which was Hilton, Haskins, and Brown, and so I was the guy that had to help keep their money together. I was recently asked to be on the task force for the cannabis within South Orange. I've been going backwards again now. I've been a football, basketball, a coach, my kids are now older, but when they were younger, that was my go-to, and I enjoyed that a lot. And even going a little bit further back, 20 years ago, my family, when my mother passed away, we set up a scholarship, which is included within the Columbia High School Scholarship Fund under her name, and the school district, but the fund itself is directed towards an individual student each year. And it is mostly driven off of need, and it's something that when I think about that, it really makes me enjoy being a part of it because you're actually giving back and touching one person individually every year. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you once again to all 5 applicants. Thank you. It was wonderful to hear from all of you about why you wanted to be a member of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the application process. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Manning. All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous, Ms. Delgado. We will be adjourning to executive session. Thank you.
Just quick question. Do we have the link? I don't think I've seen it. Can it be resent?
Yep, I will resend. I'm going to get settled in and resend.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Good job, Evan. Oh, sorry.
Hey Keith, am I able to chat with the people who are in the district room or not so much?
You certainly can.
Oh, that's cool.
It's recorded though, just as a heads up.
Oh,
And it's live on YouTube.
Oh,
Hey, Tony.
hey, what's going on?
Is this being recorded right now?
Everything is being recorded.
Even now.
Even now.
To get out the room.
No. As long as your mics are off.
So it's all streaming on YouTube now, huh? All right. You turned them off. I just thought I'd be able to chat with the candidates or see them, but I guess not. That's all right.
Live right now.
Oh, there they are. All right, well, whatever.
Excuse me, we'll be resuming in 1 minute. Thanks. Mr. Barnes, are we on the record? Great. Thank you, and good evening again, everyone. Ms. Delgado, can you please call the roll?
Okay. Board Member Susan Bergen,
Here.
Board Member Shannon Cuttle.
Here.
Okay, take that one out. Board Member Thayer Joshua,
Here.
Board Member Anne Marie Manny,
Here.
Board Member Alyssa Malaspina,
Here.
Board Member Erin Siders,
Here.
Board Member Courtney Winkfield,
Here.
and Board Member Johanna Wright.
You made it, Ms. Wright. You just try one more time. We saw the light, but then we
Okay.
just missed it.
Board
No,
Member,
no, yeah, for Ms. Wright, sorry.
Board Member Johanna Wright.
All
He
right.
appears to be frozen.
Johanna, if you can hear me, go back out and try going back in. Again. Using the link. Okay, it seems like she's doing that.
All right, well, just wait a minute. We want to make sure we have full board participation, so give us 1 second. Thank you. Go ahead, Board Member Wright.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay,
There she is.
all right.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Delgado. I'm just making, I'd like to, thanks again, everybody, all 5 applicants. We had a very robust discussion. I think one thing that I'd like to make sure is said on behalf of the entire board is that this is not a reflection of 4 people who we don't think can do the job. We actually believe we had a very qualified applicant pool this evening. And with that said, like to call for nominations for the board open vacancy.
I'd like to make a nomination.
Board Member Winkfield,
Sure. I'd like to nominate Chris Sabin.
any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Tony Misaki.
Thank you, Board Member Malaspina. Any other nominations? All right, we will go in order of the way the nominations were made. Ms. Delgado, I'm going to read. Oh, sorry. I guess I need, okay, so can I have a second? Okay. I have a second for Mr. Saban.
Second.
All right, and a second for Mr. Mizaki.
Second.
All right, so Mr. Gusher, that was Board Member Manny for Saban and Board Member Wright for Mizaki. I will now read the resolution for both for candidates. Okay. This is, how do you sew all this paper? This is Resolution 4166 to appoint board member to fill vacancy. Whereas a vacancy has been caused on this Board of Education by the resignation of Board Member Kamal Zubieta, and whereas this Board of Education has by law authority to fill a vacancy for the unexpired term thereof, now therefore be it resolved by a majority vote of all remaining members of the Board of Education of the South Orange Maplewood School District that Christopher Saban be and hereby is appointed to serve as a member of the Board of Education of the school district for the unexpired term of July 12, 2021, ending on January 5th, 2022. No. I mean, I can, but I don't think they can.
I can talk loud. If you would explain to the public why you are reading the resolution when you got two nominations, because the board is obligated to
Right, so we're,
the order of the nominations that are received.
right, the board is obligated to vote on nominations in the order they are received. This is similar to board officer appointments that are done during every board reorganization. Okay, with that, Ms. Del Gercio, can you please call the roll, this time reverse alphabetical order?
Do we need a second for that resolution?
We did it right.
Okay.
Okay.
And you need discussion if there is one.
All right. Any discussion on Resolution 4166? All right, seeing none, close the discussion. Ms. Del Gercio, can you please call the roll in reverse alphabetical order?
In reverse, okay. Board Member Wright?
We lost her. So can we go back, wait a second for her to come back?
Yeah, wait a second. We'll give, oh, there we go. Board Member Wright, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Did you hear? Are you caught up? I just want to make sure you heard everything. Board Member Wright, can you hear us?
Board Member Wright, you're muted again.
Okay, I got this colorful circle circling.
Okay, can you, this is the nomination
Can
for
I just
Mrs.
stay, can I just stay on? Because when I go off it, the circle comes.
Okay, so go ahead. We're waiting for your vote on the nomination.
What was the nomination?
This is for Mr. Saban.
No.
Board Member Winkfield?
Yes.
Board Member Siders?
Yes.
Board Member Malaspina?
No.
Board Member Manning,
Yes.
Board President Joshua,
Yes.
Board Member Cuddle,
Yes.
Board Member Bergen.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-2. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations to Mr. Saban, and thank you once again to all of the applicants this evening. Board Secretary, Ms. Del Garcia will now what's the word I'm looking for? Offer the oath of office to Mr. Saban.
Okay, this is for the oath of office. And I, Christopher Saban,
I, Christopher Saban,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and this state
under
the authority of the people.
So
So help me God.
So help me God.
Okay. I, Christopher Saban,
I, Christopher Saban,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
that I possess the qualifications
prescribed by law for the office
prescribed by law for the office
of member of a Board of Education,
of member of a Board of Education,
am not disqualified as a voter
am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
and that I am not disqualified from membership
and that I am not disqualified from membership,
on the board due to conviction of a crime
I am not disqualified from the board, from membership on the board due to conviction of a crime
or offense listed in NJS
or offense listed in NJS
18A:12-1,
18A:1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
and I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
perform all duties of that office
perform all duties of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to make a motion to adjourn to executive, nope, what do I do first? I'm sorry, what? Okay, sorry, this is now the time for our second public speaks. Mr. Bonds, I don't see any sign-in on the sign-in sheet. I'll quickly double check to make sure that, are there any here? Give me a second. I do not see any on the audio sign-up sheet. And I do not see any on the written sheet. Confirmed? Thank you, Mr. Barnes. So that concludes our second public speaks for this evening. I'm going to make a motion for exec, but do I need to notice next week's meeting first?
I have a
Thank you. All right, Board Member Malaspina?
Sorry, I have a point of order question. I just happen to be right now looking through the agenda listed for the public, and nowhere does I see that it lists that we're going back into second session, executive session. I don't know if that has to be there. I don't know. I just want to make sure we're not doing anything wrong.
No, we can always go into executive session if we need to discuss personnel legal issues, even if it's called not on the agenda.
Okay, just wanted to check. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The Board of Education will meet in closed session on Monday, July 19th, 2021 at 6:30 PM. In the well, we won't meet in closed session in the district meeting room. In 525 Academy Street, as well as in a hybrid environment, as well as using the online video conference platform to discuss personnel, legal issues, negotiations, and other matters to be announced at a later date. Immediately following the closed session, the Board of Education will meet in public session at 7:30 in person here at 525 Academy Street, the district meeting room, as well as online using our online video conference platform, which will include hearings of individuals and delegates. The community can view the meeting by following the steps which will be listed on the agenda. If there are members of the community who would like to attend the meeting in person, please note that masks and social distancing are recommended in accordance with guidance received from local Department of Health. Action will be taken. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Manning. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is that is unanimous, Ms. Delgado. And now I'd like to make a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss personnel and legal matters. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Manning. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. To the virtual colleagues, I'll be sending a link momentarily.
Thank you. Just wondering, that was what I was going to ask about. Thank you.
Thank you all, and to everyone, have a wonderful evening. And once again, before we go, I would be remiss if I did not thank the district administration, specifically Mr. Bonds, Ms. Moore, Ms. Cuadrado, Ben, Dr. Taylor, and Ben Myers, Dr. Taylor, and the entire team for helping us pull this off. We very much appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll be back on Monday. Have a wonderful evening.